Today we are visiting Brother Abdurraheem Green. Abdurraheem Green has a very interesting story with Egypt. We're going to go to him and listen to his story and find out how he took his journey to Islam. Please come with us. Brother Abdurraheem, tell me about the beginning. I mean, what attracted you to Islam? How did this journey begin?
Well, it's a bit interesting since when my father, when I was about 10 years old, my father was posted to Egypt. He was working for Barclays Bank International. So it was Sadat's open door policy had started. So my father went to do a combined effort with Bantu Care. So they formed a bank together and established that bank in Egypt. So I spent my holidays in Egypt, but my school was in a boarding school in UK, so I would go back and forth.
So you didn't move with him when he went?
Well, I did for my holidays. So my home was really in Egypt, but my school, which was what most of my life was in England. So. And my school was a Roman Catholic boarding school. So my mother originally, she's from Poland, and she was insisting that me and my brother were going to have a good Roman Catholic upbringing. So even before I was born, I was signed up to go to this prestigious Roman Catholic boarding school, a place called Ampleforth College. So I went between Ampleforth College and Egypt, and so. It's comparing two religious traditions and also comparing two cultures, I would, and so that was my first exposure to Islam and Muslims, and my impression was very good. From the religious point of view, I would see our cook. We had a cook. His name was Ibrahim, very humble man.
In Cairo.
In Cairo, always was dressed in his galabiya, very humble, very kind, very sweet, very soft, very gentle. I never, you can't imagine him even shouting, yeah. And he was so kind to me and my brother. Really, I could tell you amazing stories, but seeing him pray, he used to pray always his prayers. He would put his prayer mat in the kitchen, when the adhan came, he would say his prayers. Sometimes we'd go in, looking for, Coca-Cola or Silamoon or something, and Ibrahim's praying. You have to wait till. So I'm watching him praying, and there he is just standing there, praying. And then I will go back to the Roman Catholic monastery, and then I will see what they call praying with the incense and the mass and the cross and the Holy Communion and the singing, and this is my first real comparison in my mind between how a Muslim is worshipping God and how we were worshipping God in the Christian tradition. And I said to myself, surely this is the one. The way the Muslim man was praying seemed to be so simple, just direct communication, this person and God. No rituals, no fanfare, no. So this impressed me a lot. And I would say also the other thing was a more general atmosphere. Actually, when I first went to Egypt, I was frightened. It scared me. And the reason I realize it scared me in retrospect is because people are so alive. Literally, the feeling of life is so strong. Whereas, yes, you can come to London, everything is very busy, but many times you go on the tube, you will think, yeah, people are alive, but actually they seem like they're dead, almost like they are. I call it the land of the living dead.
Each to himself.
Yeah. And even like people don't, so I think this vibrancy, it scared me in the beginning, but then I began to really appreciate. Now, one of the things that amazed me, now my father, as a businessman working in Egypt, he found this frustrating. But me, I thought this is amazing. Like nothing seemed to upset anybody. Everything was, inshallah, ma'alash. Like
taking it easy.
Ma'alash, it doesn't matter. Like, subhanallah, it's really amazing. Really.
You like that? Some people don't like it.
No, but I can understand if you're trying to do business or, you from the viewpoint of the Westerner who wants everything controlled. I want this at this time. I want this to happen then, But from my point of view, as a confused young man, very disenfranchised with many of the things about Western life, seeing this attitude of not being worried, not being bothered, everything was, if Allah wills it. It was, this idea of having this complete faith and trust in Allah, that whatever's going to happen, it's going to be okay because God is going to look after everything. I found this because it doesn't exist. You don't find this. Even in the Roman Catholic monastic school, you don't find this. But I found this in... So these were things that had a very, very big impact on me. But I think the one thing that had the biggest impact was in my last few months when I was in Egypt. I was working...
How old were you?
Oh, now I'm 19. So we moved when I was 10, left when I was 19. This was my last year. I had a gap year between finishing A-levels, going to university. And I got a job working on a tugboat in the Red Sea that was servicing oil rigs. And it was a company that my father had helped set up. Anyway, to cut the long story short, I'm sitting one day having food and not the captain, but the one below the captain. The captain was German. The vice captain, I know that you don't call him vice captain, but the second in command.
Maybe the assistant?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a special name, a special nautical term, I don't know. But the second in command of the ship, he was Egyptian and very well spoken. He sat down with me and started asking me about what's my religion. So I'm telling him I'm a Christian, and he said, what do you believe? And so anyway, we had a long conversation. It's going on 45 minutes. And I'm telling him about Jesus and the Trinity, and he's asking me all these very clever... I only know it afterwards that what he was doing. He was asking me all these very clever questions. So when I was trying to explain to him, so he says, so how many gods do you believe in? Do you believe in one God or three gods? No, there's one God. The Father is God, the Son is God, and the Holy Spirit is God. But it's not three, it's three in one. So he said, well, what does that mean? So we had this discussion going on and on. In the end, he says to me, so you believe that Jesus was God? I said, yes. And he said, and you believe that Jesus died on the cross? I said, yes. So he said, so you believe God died? When he said that,
shocking.
Exactly the right word. Shocking. I was shocked. Maybe I didn't show it, but inside myself, I was like, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe that you can stick God on a cross and kill God. I realized that it was logically ridiculous. And I think that was probably the day that I stopped really being in any way, sense, or form a Christian. I knew and I realized that the belief that a man is God, any religion that told me that some human being is God or part of God or one with God was nonsense, was not true. And I think that was, in a sense, prepared me for the most important thing was when I read a translation of the Quran.
Did you have that conversation in English or in Arabic?
Yeah, in English. My Arabic was still is
so
not
he
very
was
good.
He was quite educated.
Yeah, yes, very, very much.
To conduct such
a
theological discussion with
definitely he was, and very psychologically clever. He didn't attack me. He didn't attack my religion. I don't even remember him discussing much about Islam. And this is actually, from a point of view of understanding how to give da'wah, you can't really convince someone, especially a Western person, who has a feeling of great superiority. Unless you make him realize or her realize that there's something fundamentally wrong with what they believe, they will never, what you say about what you believe will just go it will bounce off them because they say, who are you? You're just a savage. You're just a, you're just a backward person, right? I'm sorry to say many people, more than you imagine, think like that. But if you can make them think, wow, there's something wrong with my belief system, then you've opened the door a little bit, to put what you have to say. He was very clever.
So that triggered the conversion.
It triggered a whole process of thinking and searching. And I mean, I had
Over how long?
To be honest, since I was 14 years old, I was searching. I was not happy. Not happy with Christianity, not happy with Western life, not happy with the narrative that my life was supposed to get a good degree, get a good job to earn money so my children could, go back to the same school. I thought there must be more to life than this. This can't be. So despite having a very well-off background, I wasn't happy. And this was really what drove me, the existential questions, they call it existential anxiety. What is life for? So even when I was a teenager, a young teenager, I was still thinking about these things. But, it's that type of conversation and that experience I had, those experiences I had in Egypt. I was only 10. So that had a very big impact on making me question even more deeply and look. So I looked through different religions, Buddhism. I practiced Buddhism for a bit. I did a lot of yoga and meditation and looked into different spirituality and spiritual traditions. And funnily enough, I never thought of looking at Islam. I don't know why. and I think one of the reasons was because at the time, the Iranian Revolution had happened. And my image of it, now this is the crazy thing, despite the fact that the people I knew who were Muslim were the nicest people I ever met in my life. I loved Egypt. I loved Egyptians. I loved the country. I used to say if there was a war between England and Egypt, I'll go and fight. I mean, I honestly, I loved Egypt so much. I loved the people so much. But despite that, my image of Islam was Ayatollah Khomeini, the Iranian Revolution.
From television.
Yeah, from television. This is the power of the media on people's minds, how it can control and manipulate them. Even when the reality of the TV is almost more than the reality of an actual experience, living. It's someone needs to do some study on this.
So now we're in the mid 80s now.
Yeah.
When that conversation happened.
Yes. Yeah.
And what was the process afterwards?
Well, the process was more thinking, more looking, and I reached a conclusion. I actually reached a stage where I don't know why I never looked at Islam, but I'd invented my own religion, which was a mixture of sort of Christianity and Buddhism and I don't know, but maybe some Star Wars and everything, that I put into this religion. And it was the worst of all. It was terrible. And then I thought, that's it. I gave up. I said, forget religion. I just need money. I need to make more money. And the crazy thing is that what made me pick up the Quran was nothing to do with religion. It was to do with money. I wanted to think, how can I make the most money in the easiest way? So I started thinking, being a historian, I started thinking of history. I thought of the British and the Industrial Revolution. I said, that's too much hard work. The Americans, too much. The Japanese, all they do is work. And I thought, those Saudi Arabians, they've been sitting on their camels for thousands of years, going Allahu Akbar. They did no work, did absolutely nothing, and they've got all this money. I said, that sounds like, this sounds good.
And you thought it was because of their religion?
I just thought, okay, so what's their religion?
Okay.
I didn't think it's because of the religion, but I thought, okay, I'm going to study this. Who are these people? Let me study. So the first place I thought to look is their religion, right? So I thought, okay, what's their religion? Oh, Islam. Oh, Quran. I know the Quran. Okay, so then I went down to W.H. Smith's. I took a translation, Penguin Classics translation of the Quran, and I started to read this translation. And that was it. For me, after 1 week of reading it, I knew this book is from God. I knew it. I actually remember the moment. I was going from Clapham Junction over the river to Victoria train station. I remember the moment looking out on the River Thames, looking back and saying, if I've ever read a book that's from God, it's this one.
SubhanAllah.
Yeah, and that was it. That was the real change. Then I knew that I had found the truth. I had discovered what I'd been looking for, and this was it.
Well, luckily you thought of the Quran, because if you kept it to the Saudis or any Arabs, you would probably have been deterred from from looking into Islam.
Yeah, maybe, who knows? They, like Muhammad Asad said, Alhamdulillah, I found Islam before. Yeah. But I wouldn't say that. Honestly, my experience, I didn't know any Saudis anyway, but my experience of the Egyptian people was a very, very good, positive experience, like overwhelmingly good. Friendly, people laughing, joyful people. So my experience of them was very good, alhamdulillah.
Now, you've decided to enter into Islam.
Yeah.
What was your family's reaction?
To be honest, it was very tough. So it's very easy to enter into Islam, but to change your life, and Islam is a whole different way of life, because the whole focus of your life is your connection with Allah. How can it not? If you're praying 5 times every day, it means the whole center of your life is going to be this connection with Allah. It forces you to break everything and to turn to Him and have that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I found this, to be honest, very difficult. It's a very big shift from doing a bit of yoga and a bit of meditation and, when you feel like it, to actually a disciplined spiritual practice. And that's what really I found really hard, and giving things up and stopping my, my crazy, my jahiliyyah, my wild life, But alhamdulillah, I got there in the end. It was tough. I went through some big tests, but alhamdulillah, I got there in the end, because at the end of the day, my heart was just not happy. I was so miserable. That was it. That was the real thing. I was miserable because I knew I'd found the truth, but I wasn't following the truth that I had discovered. And that's the worst place to ever be. That's the worst place to be.
Now, as you said, because Islam is a way of life and it shows on a person, it affects his relations with everybody that's around him.
Well, with my parents, so this is why I was getting to the point that there's a different. Now, they knew I was Muslim in the sense that I told them I'd become Muslim, but they didn't take it seriously, because I said I'm a Muslim drinking alcohol and eating pork, and like nothing changed about me. It was like a philosophy, But when I started to pray, and when I started to change my diet, and when I stopped drinking alcohol, and I stopped doing, things that I changed everything. When I finished with my girlfriend, and so then it's like, okay, well, you're crazy now. And it's strange, because my parents had Muslim friends from Egypt. They had people, until that time they had people.
Yeah, but it's okay if it's the other.
Yeah. So see, to be fair, my parents are quite open-minded. My father passed away. Alhamdulillah, 10 days before he died, he took his shahada. Alhamdulillah, yes. Alhamdulillah, after years and years, alhamdulillah.
That was really great.
Alhamdulillah. There's a video you can see, people can see on YouTube. If they search, they will find it, about how my dad took his shahada. And so, but my mum still, she's, Catholic, and still very, she's slowly, maybe, who knows, Allah guides who He wants to guide. But at that time it was tough. They were not accepting it, They accepted it because they're liberal, they're Western liberal, it's like what you want to do with your life is your business. But they were not happy.
What about the rest of your life? I mean, you probably had colleagues, friends, acquaintances.
I really found out who my friends were. I found out. People I thought were my friends, they didn't want to know me. But there were other people who did not change one single bit in their attitude towards me. So I have to say, my brother, alhamdulillah, we still have really, he never really changed. Maybe a little bit, but nothing, nothing really bad, I would say. And a few of my friends, alhamdulillah, didn't change at all. But most of the people, apart from my family, I would say generally are very good. Alhamdulillah, I didn't have a problem with my half-sisters and my nieces, my nephews, my cousins. No one really had a big issue. But some of my friends, in the end of the day, look, they were my friends because we used to drink alcohol together, and we used to do haram things which I wasn't doing. When I wasn't drinking anymore and going to parties anymore, what's the common interest? You thought you were friends for something else, but you realized then, no, it was just these silly things. That's not friendship, really. you know. So I didn't lose anything when I lost them, if that's all.
Now, when you started practicing Islam, you were here in England?
Yes, yes.
Was it helpful on the part of the Muslim community, or you didn't have any connections? Because I've heard some people say that initially they feel lonely, they feel isolated.
I went straight to the London Central Mosque. This is the only place I knew there was a mosque. I didn't know in Regent's Park. I didn't know any other place. I didn't know that even if there was another mosque in London. I knew the London Central Mosque. I'd driven past it so many times. I knew, okay, I know there's a mosque there. I went there, alhamdulillah, straight away I found some good people. I made friends with them. They were very good to me. And I had, from the beginning, alhamdulillah, I had some very good, mostly Moroccan friends, Moroccan, Algerian. But I had friends from everywhere, alhamdulillah. And most of the people that I met there and the friends I made were, you know, really, really good and looked after me and were very kind, you know. So I was very lucky that way. I won't say I haven't had bad experiences. You know, I've gone into masajid, in Birmingham, for example, years ago I went into a mosque and, you know, this kid says, what are you doing here? You know, he said, I'm a Muslim. He said, oh, you can't be a Muslim, you're a gura, which means like, you know, it means you're a white man, you know. You can't be a Muslim, you're a white man. So I've experienced, you know, stuff like that. But actually, to be honest, in the Regent's Park Mosque, alhamdulillah, my experience was actually really good. And, you know, from that perspective as being a new, and then there was Yusuf Islam, he had his circle there, and a lot of, you know, there weren't that many converts, but whoever was there, they would go to this circle. So straight away you were making, you know, whatever few converts that were there, you were meeting them. So alhamdulillah, I went to the right place, really, I think, you know. So I was very lucky, alhamdulillah, blessed that way by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Now, since then and until today, do you see more people showing interest in Islam, converting to Islam, or is it difficult to tell?
No, I think definitely. Definitely there are, and that's just simply because there are more converts to Islam. And I think that almost always a convert will take the issue of da'wah very seriously. Because they feel, you know, they feel what it was like not to have that guidance. And
unlike people like us who are born as Muslims, we take it for granted.
We take it for granted, you see. So, but when you've been in the darkness, when you've really tasted that loneliness, that emptiness, you know, of not knowing Allah, and then, alhamdulillah, you have that life in your life, that light in your life, then, you know, you have to share it with others. And especially because you have family that you care about, you have friends, you want them to know. So I think because of this, it's very normal that as you get more people who are converting to Islam, they will talk to the people they know. And then, yeah, so definitely I think Islam, alhamdulillah, is definitely growing in this country. And actually, you know, some you may not notice. There are people who are Muslim, you'll never know they're Muslim. If you saw them on the street, you'll not know they're Muslim. But they alhamdulillah, they are Muslim, and they go to the mosque and they pray and they do everything, but maybe they just don't look like how you think a Muslim is supposed to look like. So yeah, alhamdulillah.
Well, this issue of a Muslim is supposed to look like something, that's really a cultural thing.
It is.
It's not
and
really...
I used to walk around for years in a thobe and a turban, and I even had a stick, you know, and sandals, and
like Moses.
Yeah, really. You know, you know, so yeah. I look at it as a stage. Alhamdulillah, to be honest, it helped me in a way. In a way, it helped me because it sort of forced me to separate myself a bit, and maybe I needed that in the beginning. If I was too, like I said, you can't walk into a disco with well, you probably can, but you can't walk into a disco with a thobe and a turban, and, you know, you're not going to do it. You know, it means it creates that little bit of a barrier between you. So, yeah, for years I was.
And there is this urge to have one's unique identity.
Yes.
In the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like you are trying to forge a different identity, and it's a struggle to find. It is, and I suppose in many ways I'm still, having that struggle. But it's a struggle lots of people have. I mean, across the board, people have struggled with their different identities, whether it's cultural identities, religious identities, sexual identities. You know, people are all struggling with these things. I think it's one of the big challenges of modern life and modern society, is that we don't have one clear-cut identity anymore. So many people are, you know, struggling with many things. So,
and that's the problem arises when we are told you have to choose, and you cannot really make a choice because it's rather complex.
I like this, the documentary makers, Panorama, they were interviewing me once. They said, you know, are you British or are you Muslim? I said, you know, the Prophet Muhammad, is like asking the Prophet ﷺ, are you Arab or are you Muslim? Are you Meccan or are you Muslim? I mean, it doesn't mean anything. It's like, I'm British and I'm Muslim.
And you can be British and be Christian.
Why? Exactly. So I'm British and I'm Muslim. I don't look at that as a conflict. The two things can come together. Why can't they come together? Although we have to understand that there is a drive amongst certain right-wing, extreme right-wing, white supremacist, Christian supremacist groups to link national identity with religious belief. So this is happening in Europe strongly now. You know, and there are some places in Europe that in order to be of this country, you must be a Christian. If you're not Christian, it's like you're a traitor. You're not only left the religion, you've left your national identity as well. So there is a strong movement to link those two things. It's something we have to be careful of, I think.
Well, Brother Abdurraheem, it's been a great pleasure to talk to you.
It's been a pleasure, Doctor, to
Thank you very much.
and to meet you. MashaAllah, big pleasure.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khair.